She wasn't invited. She wasn't supposed to be there at all. But one cream-colored envelope lying on the dusty floor of a little dress shop would lead Emma into a night that changed not only her life, but the fate of the entire world. Emma had always been invisible. She spent her days hunched over worn fabric, stitching gowns for people who never bothered to remember her name. The shop smelled of mothballs and frayed lace, and at night she walked home counting coins that barely covered rent. Romance? That belonged in movies, not in the life of a seamstress who had given up on fairy tales. But that evening, as she swept the corner of the shop, her broom nudged against a thick envelope. Gold letters embossed on the front read, "The Honorable Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore request the pleasure of your company, a wedding invitation." Not just any wedding, the Whitmores were billionaires, the kind of people Emma only read about in gossip magazines while waiting at the bus stop. She turned it over in her hand, heart racing. She knew it wasn't hers. She knew walking into that glittering world was reckless, maybe even humiliating. But when you spend years watching dreams fade, sometimes one moment of madness feels like the only choice left. So Emma made a decision. One night. One stolen seat at a stranger's table. One chance to see what life looked like when money and power flowed like champagne. What she didn't know was that the gown she slipped into, the borrowed smile she wore, and the single step she took into that ballroom, would unravel a secret no fairy tale ever warned her about. The ballroom glowed like a dream. Chandeliers dripped light across marble floors, violins hummed through the air, and waiters glided between silk gowns and polished shoes with trays of champagne that sparkled like liquid gold. Emma stood at the edge of it all, her breath caught in her throat, trying to convince herself she belonged. The gown she wore wasn't borrowed, she had made it herself, stitching by candlelight after the shop closed. Midnight blue satin, cut to fall just right, hiding the frayed seams she couldn't afford to perfect. To her, it was the most daring thing she had ever created. To everyone else, it looked like another dress in a sea of couture. That was her only safety, to blend in. She gripped the invitation she'd found days ago, the paper already soft at the corners from her nervous hands. At the doors, a man in a black suit glanced at it, barely nodding before waving her inside. Relief washed over her. For one night, the walls between her world and theirs had crumbled. Her place card, table 12. She slipped into a seat before anyone asked questions, praying no one noticed they had never seen her before. Across the table, an older woman eyed her with polite disinterest, then turned back to her wine. Good. She was invisible again. Until he walked in. The best man. Adrian. Tall, sharply dressed, his tie loosened just enough to make him seem untouchably relaxed in a room full of stiffness. His smile didn't belong to the rich, it was too easy, too genuine. When his eyes swept the table and landed on Emma, it felt like the chandelier light bent toward her. Their first exchange was nothing, a shared glance, a polite smile. But it lingered. Through the speeches, through the clinking of glasses, she felt his gaze circle back to her again and again, like he was trying to place her face in a memory he couldn't quite reach. Later, when the music rose and couples filled the floor, Adrian crossed the room. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask the older woman at the table, or the heiress in diamonds. He extended his hand to Emma. Her heart rattled against her ribs. Every instinct told her to shake her head, to stay small and unnoticed. But her fingers betrayed her, slipping into his. On the dance floor, his confidence wrapped around her like the music itself. "I don't think we've met," he said, voice low enough to drown under the violins. Emma's throat tightened. A dozen excuses flickered through her head. She chose the simplest lie. "I'm a friend of the bride's family." His eyes narrowed, not with suspicion, but amusement. "Interesting," he said. "Because I'm pretty sure I know every friend of the family." The words should have crushed her. Instead, his grin softened them, turned them into a secret between them. Emma's cheeks burned, but for the first time in years, she felt alive, seen, pulled into something she couldn't explain. The waltz ended too soon. She tried to step back, but Adrian's hand lingered at hers, warm and insistent. "Stay," he murmured. "I want to know why you're really here." She didn't answer. Couldn't. The truth was too absurd. And yet, as his gaze locked with hers, the room blurred, and it no longer mattered that she wasn't invited. For Emma, it felt like the beginning of a story that was never supposed to be written. But this story had plans of its own. Emma told herself it would end that night. A dance, a stolen glass of champagne, a secret to hide away for when life went back to its gray routine. But Adrian didn't let it end. The morning after the wedding, a sleek black car idled outside the dress shop where Emma worked. The driver held out a note with Adrian's looping handwriting, "Dinner tonight. Say yes." Emma laughed nervously, almost tearing it up. But she couldn't. Hours later, she found herself in a rooftop restaurant, the city glittering below. Adrian was waiting at a table lit by candles, his suit jacket draped casually over his chair, as if this was just an ordinary evening. For him, maybe it was. For her, it was a different planet. That dinner led to another. And another. Soon, her life became a blur of impossible moments. A helicopter ride at sunset, the wind tangling her hair as Adrian pointed out landmarks below like they belonged to him. A midnight picnic under stars on a beach no map had ever mentioned. A visit to a boutique where he told her, with a careless smile, to pick anything you like, as though the price tag stitched in gold thread meant nothing. Emma floated through it all like someone who had stepped inside a movie and forgotten where the exit was. Her friends from the shop whispered behind her back, speculating who the mysterious man was. Some envied her. Some didn't believe her at all. But when the lights went down, and it was just Adrian's voice across a table or in her ear on a quiet drive, Emma felt something more dangerous than envy. She felt seen. He listened. He laughed at her sarcasm, teased her for her nervous habits, encouraged her when she talked about her secret dream of designing gowns under her own name. Still, the cracks appeared. When she asked about his work, he always brushed it off. Research, he'd say vaguely. Nothing interesting. His phone would buzz late at night, messages he'd never explain. Sometimes, in the middle of their laughter, she'd catch a flicker of something hard in his eyes, a weight he carried but never shared. And then there were the people. Men in black suits who appeared at the edges of their outings. A car idling too long near her apartment. Adrian always waved it off. Security, he'd mutter, changing the subject with a kiss or a joke. Emma wanted to believe him. She wanted to surrender to the fairy tale, to stop asking questions. After all, what did it matter? For the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. Yet deep down, she felt the truth pressing against the edges of her perfect illusion. Adrian wasn't just rich. He wasn't just the charming best man who had plucked her from obscurity. He was hiding something. And that something was about to find her, whether she wanted it or not. Because one glittering evening, as they stepped into a grand gala filled with diamonds and whispered deals, Emma would hear words that shattered every fantasy she had built. Words that would drag her from a stolen romance into a secret that could shake the entire world. The gala shimmered like a palace pulled from another century. Crystal chandeliers dripped light across ceilings painted with angels, violins played above the soft murmur of deals whispered between men in tuxedos and women draped in jewels. Emma clung to Adrian's arm, trying to look calm while her stomach twisted with nerves. She had stitched every detail of her gown herself, black silk with a daring neckline, the kind of dress she never imagined wearing. But here, surrounded by women who had never worried about rent or overdue bills, she felt like an imposter. Adrian leaned down, his breath warm at her ear. "You look like you own the room," he said. She laughed quietly. "I feel like the help snuck in." Adrian's eyes softened. "Trust me. Tonight, you belong." The words steadied her, until he left. It was supposed to be just for a moment. A group of older men waved him over, their faces too serious for champagne chatter. Emma drifted toward the balcony, hoping for fresh air, but stopped when voices floated around the corner of the marble hallway. The prototype failed again. The council won't be patient forever. Emma froze. The words came from a man in a tailored suit, his voice low but urgent. Another replied, "We can't afford exposure. If the resonance tech leaks." Adrian's voice cut in, sharp and commanding. "Keep it contained. The public must never know." "Not yet." Emma's blood went cold. Resonance tech? Council? She pressed herself against the wall, every nerve screaming to leave. Then the lights inside flickered. A low hum vibrated through the air, rattling the crystal glasses on nearby tables. Guests gasped, looking up at chandeliers that swayed though no wind touched them. Emma's heart raced as the hum deepened into a pulse, like the beat of a colossal machine. The glass in her hand trembled. Then, impossibly, it lifted. Not just hers. Dozens of glasses across the hall floated into the air, liquid trembling inside. A woman shrieked. Men cursed. But Adrian and the suited men didn't panic, they watched, grim and focused, as though they had expected it. The hum grew louder. Emma's hair lifted from her shoulders, her body weightless. She clawed at the marble wall, but her feet left the ground. Her scream caught in her throat as the room dissolved into light. For a heartbeat, she saw everything, the chandeliers frozen midsway, diamonds scattering refracted sparks, Adrian's face turned toward her, eyes wide not with surprise, but recognition. And then, silence. When Emma's eyes opened, the ballroom was gone. The chandeliers, the gowns, the polished marble, all of it erased. She was lying on a floor of glass that pulsed faintly beneath her palms, as if alive. Above her stretched a sky of shifting colors, blues and silvers folding into one another like water. Around her, men in white coats scribbled notes on tablets that glowed without screens. Adrian stood with them, no tuxedo now, a fitted black uniform traced with faint silver lines that seemed to hum against the air. He looked at her not like the man who had stolen her heart, but like someone who had been caught. Emma's breath hitched. "Adrian, what is this?" He opened his mouth, but another voice answered first. "Welcome, Emma." She turned. A tall figure in a lab coat stepped forward, glasses glinting in the shifting light. His smile was calm, rehearsed, but his eyes held the weight of someone who carried secrets far heavier than she could imagine. "I'm Dr. Cross," he said. "And I'm afraid you've just stepped into something humanity was never meant to see." Emma's pulse thundered in her ears as Dr. Cross's words echoed, "Humanity was never meant to see." She struggled to stand on the pulsing glass floor, her heels slipping. Where am I? What happened to the gala?" Adrian moved toward her, hands raised like he was calming a frightened animal. The black uniform clung to him like a second skin, silver lines tracing his chest and arms with a faint glow. It made him look unreal, dangerous, yet impossibly beautiful. "You're safe," he said softly. "I didn't want you to find out this way." Emma's laugh was jagged. "Safe? I just watched gravity stop working. People were floating, I was floating, and now I'm in," she spun, gesturing wildly at the endless sky of shifting light above. "Whatever this is." Dr. Cross interjected smoothly, "This is an interface chamber. You were transported here through resonance transfer, think of it as a bridge. A doorway between what you know as Earth, and what lies beyond." Emma shook her head. "Beyond? Beyond what?" Adrian's gaze caught hers. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Beyond humanity." Before she could demand answers, the floor pulsed beneath them. The sky shimmered, and a shape emerged, vast and radiant. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a person. It was something in between, a being of light threaded with veins of color, its form shifting every second. At times it looked vaguely human, at others like wings of crystal unfolding into infinity. Emma stumbled back. What is that?" Dr. Cross's voice was reverent. "An envoy. We call them the luminal. They've been here long before we understood what stars even were. Adrian is their liaison." Emma's world tilted. She stared at Adrian, her heart pounding. Liaison? You mean? Adrian's jaw tightened. I was chosen. Years ago. To protect their technology. To guide the connection between them and humanity. The wealth, the power, the mystery, it was all built to keep the program hidden. Emma tried to breathe, but the air felt too thin. So all this time, the dinners, the trips, the way you looked at me, was I just another cover story? His eyes burned with something raw, almost desperate. No. You were the only part that was real. The being of light stirred. A sound filled the chamber, not exactly a voice, but a vibration that resonated inside Emma's chest, tugging at her heartbeat. She gasped, clutching at her ribs. What's happening? Dr. Cross studied her with unnerving calm. It seems the luminal have chosen to open her. Fascinating. Open me? Emma choked. Adrian's face paled. They're giving you heart sight. The being leaned closer, and Emma's vision fractured into shards of color. Suddenly, she could see, not just with her eyes, but with something deeper. She saw Adrian's face overlaid with his memories, a lonely boy staring at the stars, his trembling hand pressed against glowing glass, his voice swearing loyalty to beings no one else could see. She felt his fear, his weight, his yearning. She saw Dr. Cross, too, his ambition, his hunger for control, his quiet envy of Adrian. And then she saw herself, reflected in Adrian's heart like a flame he had tried and failed to protect. Tears spilled down her cheeks as the vision dissolved. The chamber dimmed. The envoy's light receded back into the shifting sky. Emma collapsed to her knees, shaking. I saw everything. Adrian, you weren't lying. Adrian knelt beside her, voice breaking. Now you know why I couldn't tell you. Why it was dangerous to let you close. But it's too late. You're part of this now. Dr. Cross's calm mask cracked just enough to reveal a flicker of triumph. Indeed she is. And the luminal do not give heartsight lightly. They've chosen her. Emma looked between them, her entire world rewritten. She wasn't just a seamstress who had stumbled into a fairy tale. She was standing at the edge of humanity's greatest secret. A secret now pulsing inside her own heart. And for the first time Adrian looked terrified. Not of the aliens, not of the council, but of what Emma might do next. The chamber was still humming with the aftershock of Emma's awakening when Dr. Cross stepped forward, his eyes glinting like a man who had just discovered buried treasure. A direct resonance bond, he murmured, circling her like a hawk. Unprecedented. The envoy didn't just acknowledge you, Emma, they marked you. Do you understand what this means? Emma clutched her chest, her heart still rattling from the visions. I don't understand any of this. Adrian's voice cut sharp, protective. It means nothing to you, Cross. Step back. But the scientist only smiled. Oh, it means everything. For years, they've ignored me. My research, my dedication, my sacrifices, wasted while you, Adrian, were given everything. But now? Now the envoy has chosen her. A seamstress plucked from obscurity. The council will have questions. And I will have answers. Emma staggered to her feet, glaring at him. Through heartsight, she could feel his hunger, a bottomless pit of envy masked by calm words. It made her stomach twist. You're lying. You don't care about answers. You just want control. For the first time, Cross's mask slipped. His jaw tightened. Control is survival, Miss Carter. Adrian's sentimentality blinds him. He's willing to risk our entire species for the illusion of love. I won't let that happen. Adrian moved between them, his tone low and lethal. You won't touch her. Cross's eyes flicked to Adrian with something like pity. You can't protect her from what's coming. The envoy's choice has already placed her on the board. And if you won't use her gift, others will. Emma's breath caught. Use me? As what? Cross's smile returned, colder this time. As a weapon. As a key. As leverage against beings who've kept us crawling in the dark for millennia. Heartsight doesn't just reveal, it connects. You could reach into their thoughts, their knowledge, their power. Do you think governments, corporations, entire nations won't kill to control that? Adrian's hand tightened around Emma's. She's not a weapon. She's not yours to experiment on. The air between them thickened with unspoken war. Emma's chest burned as her new gift whispered truths into her mind. Adrian was terrified of losing her, yes, but also terrified of what she might become if pushed. Cross was dangerous, but he wasn't lying about the scale of the threat. And somewhere, just beyond perception, she felt the envoy watching. Waiting. The silence broke with a shrill alarm reverberating through the chamber. Red light streaked across the crystalline walls. Cross's expression shifted from triumph to sudden calculation. "They've found us," he hissed. Adrian cursed under his breath. The council. They must have detected the resonance surge when Emma was marked. He turned to her, his grip firm, urgent. "Emma, you have to trust me. We need to leave. Now." But Cross stepped in front of the only visible exit, his coat whipping in the artificial wind. "No. If she leaves with you, she's gone. Lost to your reckless secrecy. At least with me, the council can be convinced to spare her." Adrian's eyes narrowed. Spare her, or study her? The floor trembled. The hum grew into a roar as figures materialized at the edges of the chamber, armored silhouettes with faces obscured by silver masks, their weapons gleaming with alien light. The council had arrived. Emma's heart thudded painfully. Two men she barely knew were pulling her in opposite directions, one who had shown her love, one who promised survival. And looming above them, the envoy's glow pulsed faintly, as though testing her resolve. For the first time Emma understood. This wasn't Adrian's story. It wasn't Cross's. It was hers. And whichever choice she made now, would bind her forever to a side in a war she hadn't even known existed until tonight. She swallowed hard, every nerve alive with fear and clarity. "Enough," Emma whispered. Then louder, her voice shaking but unbroken, "I'll decide who I trust." Both men froze, their eyes locked on her. And as the council soldiers closed in, Emma Carter, seamstress, dreamer, accidental witness to the impossible, realized she was no longer just a guest in Adrian's dangerous world. She was its fulcrum. The question was, which way would she turn? The council soldiers moved like shadows, their silver masks gleaming in the pulsing light of the chamber. No footsteps, no voices, just the silent advance of authority that answered to no human law. Adrian tensed, pulling Emma behind him. "Don't speak. Don't even look at them. They can smell fear." Emma's heart pounded. "What do they want with me?" His jaw tightened. "Not you. What's inside you?" The nearest soldier raised a hand, and the entire chamber shifted. Gravity twisted again, pulling Emma's stomach into her throat. She floated a foot off the ground, struggling for balance, until Adrian's arm clamped around her waist, anchoring her. Dr. Cross's voice sliced through the chaos. "Council authority is absolute," he shouted, pointing to Emma. "She bears the mark. Seize her, and let her be examined properly." Adrian's glare could have burned steel. "You traitor." But Cross wasn't finished. His words were oily, calculated. "Adrian has compromised the mission. He's let emotion infect duty. I'll take full responsibility for her custody. Don't you see? She could unlock everything we've been denied." Emma's chest burned with the strange glow of heartsight. It flickered like a second heartbeat, showing her flashes of intent, the soldier's cold obedience, Cross's hunger, Adrian's desperation. None of them cared about her choice. They all wanted to use her. Something inside her snapped. "Stop," she screamed. The air vibrated. For a moment, every figure in the room froze mid-motion, like marionettes with their strings cut. The envoy's faint light pulsed overhead, as if acknowledging her voice. Adrian's eyes widened. Emma, you just... I don't know what I did, she gasped. Her vision blurred with fractured color, showing her hundreds of possibilities, one where she surrendered, one where she fought, one where she and Adrian were torn apart. It was too much. Her knees buckled. Adrian scooped her into his arms without hesitation. We're leaving. Stop them. Cross roared. The soldiers reanimated, their weapons glowing. Blasts of searing energy cut through the air. Adrian twisted, shielding Emma as crystalline walls shattered, shards scattering like liquid glass. He sprinted toward the far edge of the chamber, but there was no door, no exit. Adrian! Emma cried. There's nowhere to go. Trust me, he panted. He pressed his palm against a sliver of the broken wall. Symbols lit up beneath his hand, patterns that matched the scars etched into his wrist. The glass rippled like water. Without warning, he plunged through. Emma screamed as they fell, not onto stone, not onto earth, but into open air. Wind ripped her hair back, her lungs seizing with terror. Below stretched the glittering city skyline, but it looked wrong, angles too sharp, lights bending like constellations rearranged. Hold on! Adrian shouted. A black craft materialized below, sleek as a blade. Its surface rippled, responding to Adrian's gestures. The two of them dropped onto its curved hull before a hatch yawned open, pulling them inside. They tumbled onto the metallic floor, breathless. The hatch sealed. Engines roared. Emma stared around the cockpit, her mind reeling. What is this? Adrian's fingers flew across alien controls. One of theirs. Stolen, repurposed. It's the only reason I've survived this long. Alarms blared as the ship jolted violently. Through the cockpit window, Emma saw two council vessels descending, their shapes monstrous against the fractured sky. They're chasing us, she whispered. Adrian gritted his teeth. They'll never stop. Emma clutched the console, her chest glowing faintly again. Through heartsight, she saw the enemy ships, not just their movements, but the intention of the pilots. She gasped. Adrian. I can see what they're about to do. He glanced at her, startled. What? They're going to flank left. Both at once. Adrian didn't hesitate. He yanked the controls, the stolen ship diving just as twin blasts of white energy tore through the space they'd occupied. The council ships collided, sparks scattering across the night. Adrian let out a ragged laugh. You really are full of surprises. Emma trembled, her body half flooded with adrenaline and terror. This isn't me. It's them. The envoy. I don't know how long I can keep this up. You don't have to, Adrian said firmly, eyes locked on hers even as the ship surged forward. We'll find a way. Together. But behind them, Dr. Cross watched from the shattered chamber, a thin smile curving his lips as the council ships regrouped. He had seen Emma's power, seen her potential. And as the echo of her scream faded into the night, Cross whispered to himself, she won't run forever. The night Emma thought would be nothing more than sewing hems for strangers had turned into a storm of revelations. A wedding dance had pulled her into Adrian's orbit, but what she found there wasn't just wealth or romance, it was a truth older than humanity itself. She had seen things no ordinary seamstress was ever meant to see, beings of light who whispered in silence, technology that bent gravity like thread, a secret war hidden beneath the glitter of chandeliers and city skylines. Adrian wasn't simply a mysterious billionaire. He was a guardian, chained to forces both wondrous and terrifying. And Emma herself? She was no longer the invisible girl in the corner. The envoy had marked her. Heartsight burned in her chest, a gift that could expose truths and bend futures. But gifts always came with a price. Now, hunted by the council, pursued by Dr. Cross's ambition, Emma and Adrian were fugitives in a world most people would never believe existed. Every choice she made would tilt the balance between survival and collapse, love and betrayal, humanity, and something far greater. And yet, amid the chaos, one truth shone brighter than the alien skyline: Adrian hadn't chosen her. The envoy hadn't chosen her. She had chosen herself. Her journey wasn't about hiding in someone else's story anymore. It was about deciding what kind of story she would write with her own life, and whether her heart was strong enough to bear the weight of two worlds. Because the truth Emma Carter now carried could save humanity. Or end it.